Welcome to Pandemic, ladies and gentlemen. Are we having fun yet, boys and girls? Does anybody need us to turn up the heat? It's a multi-billion-dollar business, and I want a piece of it. There is an ancient Chinese curse that you might live in interesting times that surely we have today. And the Mandarin character for crisis is a unique marriage of two Mandarin characters, danger and opportunity, to remind us that wherever there is danger, there is always opportunity, and fortune always favors the bold. So be bold. You have been chosen, ladies and gentlemen, as a project management team to develop a solution for a pandemic pathogen that has infected over 34 million Americans, and that has been attributed to the deaths of over 609,000. By last count, most of whom have been the elderly in nursing homes. According to most recent data, also the obese, a known risk from the beginning, at least as to the age factor. But today, there is a new product, the Pfizer, the Moderna, and the Johnson & Johnson vaccines. So let me explain how you will be evaluated in this pandemic apprentice project management simulation. Hello, my name is Major Mike Webb, and I am running for Arlington Public School Board, ostensibly. And this is truly a very unique school board race because last year, every school board across America was basically selected to appear on a reality show version of the Apprentice Pandemic Edition. But it was not just a test for public school boards, but also a test of the meanings of freedom and the definitions of what is free speech, especially as while a public health crisis provided to government the sufficient pretext to engage essentially in censorship, deciding not just what constituted permissible expressions of thought in speech, but also in the marketplace of ideas in a free society, essentially establishing a secular church and what were deemed to be permissible thoughts, but at least in a rule of law, if that founding democratic principle has still survived the current pandemic crisis, at least for the religious and moral people for whom John Adams claimed that our Constitution was written. Whatever the power of the state to control public dissemination of ideas inimical to the public morality, it cannot constitutionally premise legislation on the desirability of controlling a person's private thoughts. And regardless of anyone's particular thoughts about churches and religions, which they are certainly free to hold in a free society, it was contemplated in the Constitution that a separation of church and state would provide an extra republic of religious sects as its purpose to frame our individual consciences, to form a check and balance not just against the abuses of the separated powers in a limited government, but also to provide a moral girding for individual men and women to exercise their duties as conceived as citizens and responsible adults. For as the nation's highest court once stated, if there is any fixed star in our constitutional constellation, it is that no official, high or petty, can prescribe what shall be orthodox in politics, nationalism, religion, or other matters of opinion, including public health crisis, or force citizens to confess by word or act their faith therein. Yet on July 7th, just like the former president, having had our accounts on several social media platforms permanently suspended or on their way to being suspended permanently, we decided to bring suit in federal court, and perhaps in a cancel culture, you too have found yourself similarly situated, essentially cut off on social media from your own family and friends, unable to enjoy photos and videos from 2019 and previous years, which for some feel like they were taken in another era. The last vacation, the last birthday with friends, the last holiday with extended family. While it was different for everyone, we all lost something, a collective suffering, collective sacrifice, a year filled with the loss of life and the loss of living for all of us. But in the loss, we saw how much there was to gain in appreciation, respect, and gratitude, as the president had said in his American Rescue Plan speech to the nation from the White House before the flags of the several states on March 11th. Yet, just 8 days later, after our filing and the president's filing, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki stated, "We are in regular touch with the social media platforms, and those engagements typically happen through members of our senior staff and also members of our COVID-19 team. Given, as Dr. Murthy conveyed, this is a big issue of misinformation, specifically on the pandemic." Psaki added at that time, "We've increased disinformation research and tracking within the Surgeon General's office. We are flagging problematic posts for Facebook that spread disinformation." Surgeon General Vivek Murthy, who had appeared at the press conference alongside Psaki, stated that we're asking social media companies to consistently take action against misinformation super spreaders on their platforms. The Surgeon General elaborated on the point, stating misinformation takes away our freedom to make informed decisions about our health and the health of our loved ones during the COVID-19 pandemic. Health misinformation has led people to resist wearing masks in high-risk settings. It's led them to turn down proven treatments and to choose not to get vaccinated. This has led to avoidable illnesses and death. Using the Surgeon General as the primary spokesman for an executive agency and using medical terms like super spreaders, the message from the White House was very clear that persons opposed to the official response were to be treated like pestilence and disease. A similar message implied by the yellow stars worn by the Jewish people during the Holocaust, as the yellow color has not only been associated historically with fear and cowardice, but also with quarantine and disease. However, there is an alternative historical consideration that we want you to consider, particularly if your account has been banished, you have been canceled, you have been outcast, you've been placed in exile under the heraldic codes that have attached symbolic meanings to the colors that appear in flags that have been used for both mighty nations and military forces in the field of battle. The color yellow has also been historically associated with the color of one of the metals, and one of the most precious of those metals, for yellow is the color of gold. One day later, finding a need for clarification on July 16th, Psaki announced that there's about 12 people who are producing 65% of the anti-vaccine misinformation on social media platforms, information that she claimed to have received from the nonprofit Center for Countering Digital Hate, CCDH, which identified in a report published in March about a dozen people it said were super spreaders of anti-vaccine misinformation. According to CNN, the CCDH at the time called on Facebook and Twitter to shut down all pages run by those people. And it's not clear if we or you or others were one of those 12, just like the disciples. And just 3 days later, on July 19th, our Facebook account was permanently disabled, allegedly for unspecified safety and security reasons, and Facebook management stated at that time that they could not provide any additional information as to why. Our Facebook account had been singled out, targeted, identified, and been disabled. But beginning on January 8th, 2 days after events at the Capitol, our Facebook began experiencing what would become a series of successive suspensions, lasting 30 days each until the final disabling of our Facebook account. 3 days later, on July 19th, with only 2 videos flagged, we received a notice from YouTube that our ability to post on that platform even as a candidate for the Arlington Public School Board, has been permanently disabled for what was described again as having too many strikes. And again, with the management stating that the adverse action had been taken for unspecified safety and security reasons, for which no further information could be provided at that time. And perhaps you too have been placed in a similar situation, cut off from the details of life that matter the most. And we miss those details, the big details and the small moments, weddings, birthdays, graduations, all of the things that needed to happen but didn't. A first date, the family reunions, the Sunday night rituals, it's all exacted a terrible cost on the psyche of so many of us, and most devastating of all, during a public health crisis, times that researchers have found to be historically associated with fear, confusion, and despair. And specifically in the current public health crisis, credentialed mental health professionals have found that these times have led to increased anxiety, in addition to substance abuse, as many attempt to self-medicate, finding even pandemic-related anxiety identified by the CDC in a recent report as the second highest contributor to being a fatality if infected with the pandemic pathogen. Nonetheless, we are not just sitting around crying, but have taken this matter to the courts. And thanks to an order to amend our original complaint by the Federal District Court on July 13th, we shall be reshaping our arguments in light of the most recent developments. And so for the next few videos in this Pandemic Apprentice series, let's just review some of the arguments that we shall be presenting to the courts in this social media context, and freedom of speech and the Establishment Clause, some of which may or may not apply to you in your particular situation, and hopefully, and only in mere speculation, as we cannot even predict to any degree of certainty who might even ever locate what amounts to a message in a bottle cast on the vast expanse of the World Wide Web, with billions of users who might ever even locate this particular video, especially having been removed from our social connections on social media. But for those who may, by mere serendipity or providence, find this message, perhaps there will be no more searching day and night for an argument for you and your loved ones, to be your rallying points, to build courage, to find hope when hope seems forlorn. Maybe folks were just too panicked about large and growing numbers and forgot all about how those numbers were being caused to grow. You think? Obviously not. You're fired. 95% of businesses fail. Give less than 5% chance of getting COVID-19. Are you a loser or you're winning? This briefing is unclassified, as you were. My name is Major Mike Webb, and by God, I am running for Arlington Public School Board. Honest, as you were. cry glorious havoc, let slip the dogs of war. My friend, unless your daddy happens to own the railroad, we're going to enjoy a very brief acquaintance. You still here? I told you, you're fired. Go away. Hey, sugar, where's my coffee? This advertisement was authorized by Mike Webb. You're fired.